What's up, everybody? It's Jason Burress. Welcome to the Burress Law Life and Friends podcast. We've got a special episode 22.5. The half, just so you know, the halves mean we're probably not talking law. We're probably talking life, friends, something else, which is the case today. And I've got my law partner, my main man, Brian Mincher, with me. What's up, Minch?
How's it going?
It's going very well. And we're here today to talk about one of our favorite things, MMA.
Absolutely. I think we've had some big recent doings in the MMA world, and it's my understanding we're going to kick it around a little bit today.
We had the former light heavyweight champion, Glover Teixeira, try to retake his championship in Brazil, in his home country of Brazil. This is probably a week or two ago.
Yeah, I believe it's
capacity crowd on hand. He fought Jamal
Hill, I think.
Jamal Hill.
Yeah.
I would not have bet on him. My heart was with Glover. My pocketbook wouldn't have been, because Glover's 43.
Yep.
And at the end of that contest, and it went all 5 rounds, at the end of that contest, Glover took off his gloves. He laid them in the center of the octagon, which meant only one thing.
That is your official retirement from the mixed martial arts world. Yes.
43 years old. So you wonder why I was rooting for Glover. Like, that's one reason I always go for the old guy.
Teixeira is a very interesting cat. He's been around for a long, long time. Anytime somebody retires from a sport that rough, I'm usually pretty happy. I would love for him to have not gone out on 2 losses, but that's just not the nature of the way that game tends to work. Unless you're Khabib or George St. Pierre, there's not a lot of people that get to go out on top.
That's right. So I guess 3 fights ago, he wins the light heavyweight championship against the Polish Power.
Correct.
What is his name again?
Yuri Prochazka? No, you're talking about Jan Blachowicz.
Jan, yeah.
Blachowicz.
He wins the world championship against Jan, which kind of surprised me a little bit.
It surprised me more than a little bit. I mean, Jan handled Izzy. I mean, just straight up handled Izzy. And yeah, he was just too big for Izzy. I mean, Izzy's incredible, but he doesn't cut to make 185, and these guys are cutting a lot to make 205. So that didn't surprise me a lot. Glover beating Jan, it surprised me a great deal. I thought Jan had a chance to hold on to that title for a little while, but it didn't happen.
What I loved about that matchup, they were both about the same age, Glover being a little bit older. So Glover manhandles Jan.
Yep.
Then he fights Yuri Prochazka. Is that how you say it?
Something like that.
And Glover dominates him to defend his world light heavyweight championship, except for the last round. And round, he gets caught in a submission that I think was an exhaustion issue.
It's hard to see it as anything other than that when you know how technical Glover is on the ground. I think it was the great Hickson Gracie years ago that said everyone's a black belt until they get punched, and then they're a brown belt, and they get punched twice, they're purple, and so forth. How many times had he been hit by the 5th round of that thing? Yeah. So Uncle Chael, who we both love very much, Chael Sonnen, he likes to talk about how there are very few submissions that are actual submissions. He thinks most of them are exhaustion. And having been in the ring before and having been so exhausted that I've had to tap out in practice whenever I was not in a move at all, but I was just so tired I couldn't keep going, I tend to think he's right. I mean, there are certain times whenever somebody just catches you because they just caught you. But 4th round, 5th round, a lot of times those chokes happen because you roll over and give up that neck, because it's easier to just do that right there and then go on home.
Yeah, it was strange. I mean, one of the things about Glover, I mean, we're here, we really want to talk about Glover, what was his exceptional career. We'll get into how great. But with Glover, I mean, Glover had Jan, so we're talking about the fight before last. He has him dead to rights. He has got him fully mounted. He has him in different submission holds, but never could tap him.
Right.
And ultimately, he taps.
With Yuri.
With Yuri, and loses his light heavyweight champion. I couldn't believe. I was devastated for him. And then even worse. I mean, I think Glover, for as good of a fighter as he is, terrible marketer.
Yes.
Because he should have gotten on the mic and he should have said, I just beat him from pillar to post. I did everything but win this fight, and I want an immediate rematch. But he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't do it, and it takes forever to get that rematch signed. And then Yuri has this weird shoulder injury that starts out as like the worst shoulder injury ever.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it's like a non-surgical injury. Like nothing happened. Weird.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure I understand this whole shoulder injury. I saw the articles that came out saying it was the worst that the UFC doctors had ever seen. And then I saw him last week, and he was training.
Yeah, non-surgical. I mean, it's really weird.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
So then all of a sudden, you have a bad title eliminator, whatever that was. And then all of a sudden, it's Glover and Jamal. And I'm like, okay, this is a guy Glover can beat, although I would put him as a slight underdog. And I mean, Glover just gets, he got hurt.
Glover was there to be hit in that fight. Yeah. I don't know how many punches that Jamal threw, but I know how many of them landed. And it was about every one of them. Glover he's an interesting cat. I think he's a very good fighter. I think he's a better man. I think he's a better person than he is fighter. He's an interesting case study as a fighter because what does he do exceptional? He's not crazy long. He's not crazy fast. He's not crazy powerful. He's slick. He's got a lot of good moves, but everybody there's a black belt.
Well, he's got great jiu-jitsu right up until these last few fights.
Right.
And I think that I just think that the cardio, the age has something to do with it. But I mean, I was reading today just to get ready. 7th degree Hawaiian Kempo black belt under Hackelman, which was the owner of the pit where Liddell was.
Yeah, it's Liddell's coach.
Has his Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt under Luigi Mondelli, who's the head coach at American Top Team in Connecticut, where he lives, and earned his Vale Tudo black belt under Marco Hua. I mean, and then it goes on to say he's CrossFit certified, which is like totally out of place. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I just thought I'd throw that in.
That is
funny. And so, yeah, so I mean, that he's so used to back in the day when he gets on top, it's just
wrap. It. Yep.
And then all of a sudden it wasn't a wrap anymore. Like he had Yuri in all kinds of bad spots. And he had Jamal, as hurt as Glover was, he had Jamal mounted in the 5th round and gets reversed. And that is the story of the last couple of fights of Glover's career.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, obviously he still knows all the moves. He's still got the skill set. I mean, what is it other than what you're talking about? I mean, it's hard to imagine that it's anything other than how much you've got in the tank. And, endurance is one of those funny things. It can be affected dramatically even within a given fighter's year. Let's say you're 30 years old, you're at the peak of your conditioning, you're an Olympic level sprinter, or let's say you're an Olympic level marathoner. There's going to be days when you've got it and days when you don't, just like anybody else. I just think as you get longer in your career, I don't quite have it today, the drop off is that much more. And whenever he's out there, I mean, Jamal Hill, he's one of the best fighters in the world. He's one of the top 10 guys at his weight in the entire world. Whenever you're fighting guys at that level, there's just not a lot of margin for error.
Right.
If you you show up at 80% of your best, well, 80% of your best is probably 15% below what it took to beat that guy, even if you're better than him. Because unless you're John Jones in his 20s, the margin between you and everybody else at that level is very slim.
Yeah, and it's, like you can get on a treadmill and run really, really fast, and then all of a sudden after, 30 minutes, you're exhausted, you're not even thinking straight. Well, think about being in a fight for 25 minutes with 1 minute breaks and you're getting hit with 4-ounce gloves. I mean, it's hard to think clearly and operate, and the level of exhaustion's got to be.
For anyone who's listening to this that has not been in the ring, it's very difficult to put into words the level of exhaustion that happens after 1 minute of fighting. I mean, 1 minute whenever your life is on the line and this person is against you, is big and strong and is made the same weight that you did. It's got all the same training that you do. It's very difficult to put into words the sheer level of physical exhaustion that goes with that. And that's before someone hits you or twists on this or that. The level of pain that goes with that and just the level of, oh my God, I can't believe how much physical output is being required here. It's difficult to imagine. And the funny thing is, it's one of the reasons why you'll see older cagey fighters beat the brakes off of young guys that look great. You see a guy walk in with a full six-pack and he looks shredded, and you see Glover over on the other side sometimes. Glover in the last 5 or 10 years, he looks great compared to most 43-year-olds, but he doesn't look like the 23-year-olds that are out there. But being smart about how you use your energy and things like that can allow you to, old age and treachery versus youth and skill sort of thing for a while. But I'm afraid that just, Father Time is about 10 trillion and and I think he just finally caught up.
Yeah, I agree with that. 43 is awfully long on the two. So Glover won the world championship at age 42, which makes him the oldest first-time title winner. Because if you go and you say, okay, who's the oldest to ever win a title, that's going to be Randy.
Yeah.
At least
but Randy
in the
was
organization.
39, I think, when he first won it, and 44 when he last won it, or something along those lines.
I think he was actually younger than that. I think he was younger when he won the first.
Could have been maybe around 37.
But so let's talk about Glover. Where does Glover? So first of all, Hall of Famer, yes or no?
He would be in mine, but I don't think he'll be in theirs. I think he deserves to, based upon longevity and what he's done in the sport. But I don't think, going back to what you were talking about earlier, he was such a bad self-promoter. I don't think he's on enough people's radars except for the very, very serious hardcore fans. So I don't think there's going to be a push from the public demanding that Glover be in the Hall.
My opinion is he is easily a Hall of Famer, and he will get into the UFC Hall of Fame. UFC Hall of Fame, not the only Hall of Fame, but probably the most preeminent organization. And I think he will be in their Hall of Fame. I wouldn't bet a ton of money on it. But let's hit a different topic. Does Glover enter your Mount Rushmore of best Brazilian fighters of all time?
Mount Rushmore has four heads on it. All right. Number one, I think it's got to be Anderson Silva. I
totally disagree.
Okay? Who's your number one?
Anderson Silva is a cheat. He is a known cheat. He's a caught cheat. And once you are caught doing steroids and HGH and all that stuff, you are disqualified in the Burress Hall of Fame. So,
well, then you're not going to have very many people in your Hall of Fame. You're going to have Jack Johnson and guys in that era, I'm afraid.
No, Anderson Silva does not make it into my Hall of Fame.
All right. Well, then if you're not going off of performance and you're going off of who you like, then who's who's on your Mount Rushmore? Lyoto Machida, is he a nice enough guy to make it onto your Hall?
He's certainly a nice enough guy. He's actually a drug cheat too. He had his own issue, as you will recall. Let's see. Honorable mentions would be Lyoto, Dos Santos, Junior Dos Santos. If Cyborg wouldn't have been a drug cheat, she would definitely be on there. She got caught with a diuretic, but the problem is that can be used to mask performance-enhancing drugs, so she's out on mine. Okay, Shogun, who was on that same card, never been caught. Now, is it possible that some of these guys have done it? Of course.
Shogun fought in Pride,
Yeah, I understand that. I absolutely understand that.
Have you seen the Pride contract?
And what that implies, but Shogun gets there on my list largely due to his work in Pride and never being caught. Jose Aldo, obviously.
Yeah, I think Aldo's probably my top Brazilian, I would say. But Hua is right there as well.
Okay. Big Nog makes mine. And then shocker for you. I'm going to leave Royce Gracie as an honorable mention, and I'm going to put Glover Teixeira on my Mount Rushmore of best Brazilian fighters of all time. And I'll tell you why.
All right.
I think arguably his best work in terms of his fighting ability happened before he made it into the UFC. You have to understand, he was Chuck Liddell's main sparring partner. And there are legendary stories about, was Chuck Liddell the best fighter in the room or not? And this was when Chuck Liddell was the man. Glover could not fight in America because of his visa issues. He was relegated to Brazil back in the day for a decade. I mean, he started in 2002. He didn't make it into the UFC. I don't have the dates, but 2012 or 13, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
11, 12, or 13.
Yeah, he had some years before we saw him.
And he would have made it way before that. And would you have taken Hua or Lyoto Machida over Glover in 2007, 8, 9? I wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm putting Glover in mine because the strength of schedule is crazy. You look at who he beat. Listen to this list. He beat Jan, Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, Jared Cannonier, Rashad Evans, Ovin Saint-Preux, Ryan Bader, Quentin Rampage Jackson. I mean, that's pretty darn impressive.
That's a murderer's row right there.
That's a murderer's row.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put him on mine. I suspect you disagree, and I can't wait to hear why.
If we are going by the has never been caught taking performance-enhancing drugs as a criteria, then he's clearly in there because he's one of maybe 4 people that have ever fought that have not done any drugs, if that's true. I would have put him, including everyone, because my top Brazilians are probably going to be Edson Barbosa is going to be way up there. I like some of the smaller guys. I mean, if you're just talking about all the people in Brazil and could they all beat each other, then yeah, we're going to have to be sticking with heavyweights and light heavyweights. But as far as like Brazilians with their careers, I don't know. There's some guys in the lightweight division that were pretty tough for a long time.
Renan Barrios.
Yeah, Patricio Pitbull. I mean, there's some of the smaller fighters that I really have enjoyed watching over the years that I would probably put up there above Glover. From a personal standpoint of like people I would want to hang around with and train with, I think Glover would be very, very near my top. As far as like fighters that I think have made a big impact out of Brazil, I don't think he makes I think I'm going to put him 5th. I'll put him right outside my top 5. I think Royce Gracie has to be up there just because of the influence, because of he's the GOAT. I mean, he put the sport on the map. He was this skinny little dude that nobody thought could beat anybody, and he comes out there and beats Chemo and, I mean, Ken Shamrock. I mean, these guys that look like they could twist a horseshoe. He put the sport on the map. So you can't not have Royce Gracie on there. I'm putting Rickson Gracie on there because I'm an old school Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, and Rickson is the man. Rickson never fought in the UFC, but he's still on my Brazilian Hall of Fame. So I got to have those 2, and then I'm probably going to go just Marco Hua, King of the Streets, because I was there in the early days, and he fought back in the days when it was no time limits, no rules, bare fists, bare feet, no gloves at all. And I really liked the UFC better back then. The sport it has evolved into is not what it was intended to be. The whole debate, the whole reason that Rickson and his brother, when they sat around and talked about this and came up with it, it was to settle the martial arts debate. You boxed, I wrestled. Who's tougher? Well, I don't know. There's no way to find that out because I'm the state champion in this, you're the state champion in that. We'll just never know. Mm-hmm. That was the debate forever. And I was one of those guys. I was the reigning state champion in Oklahoma in full contact karate when the UFC was invented. Like when it started, we went and watched Dan Severn fight Royce Gracie. And I almost got in the ring because someone didn't show up that night and they needed to fill the card. That's how far back this goes, how low budget it was. We had box seats for $10 at that fight. $10 to watch Royce Gracie and Dan Severn, who had 100 pounds body weight between the two of them. Can't do that anymore. But they got out there and fought. And little skinny ass Royce beat this Olympic level wrestler. I think Dan was like a silver medalist in the Olympics, something crazy, like very, very high level. 270 pound guy gets out there. Oh, fantastic mustache.
Guy with that kind of
the second best mustache behind Don Fry in all of MMA. And you get this little guy out there. Nobody in the room thought he had a chance. There was me and about 4 other guys that actually knew what was going on whenever he put him in that choke. And we went back and went back to our martial arts school the next week and recreated everything that we saw. And nobody could understand even what happened. So I think those two Gracies have to be up there. I like Marco Ruas, and then I'm probably gonna put Edson Barbosa up there because when you see what he did to some of those guys, particularly what's his face, the California kid, Faber. When you see Faber's on crutches for months. I mean, months after that crash, and everyone, I called it a crash after that fight. It looked like a crash. I think Barbosa rounds out my top. But Glover, I love the guy. He's great. I think he deserves more credit than he gets, even though I'm not giving him as much credit as you get. I'm still saying I don't think he gets as much credit as he deserves from the general public. And part of it is he's not Conor McGregor. Conor gets up there and he fights good most of the time, and he wins most of the time. But he's not popular because he wins all the time. He's popular because he's funny, because he's intelligent, because he says clever things on the mic. And I don't know if your native language is Portuguese, how easy it is to be clever in English. Because think about how many Brazilians that we just named are there because of they're just on the mic. None of them, right? It was all because of what their performance was. And the guys that are famous in America, you got to be good, but you got to be good on the mic. The things that you think about the guys that are up there that make the most money. Old boy out of Houston, Derek. The Black Beast.
Big boy, Black Beast.
Yeah. Derek, whatever his last name is. I'm sorry, Derek. I'm vegging on your last name right now. Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis is a good fighter, but he is not as popular as he is, and he doesn't make the money that he makes because of what he does in the ring. He's hilarious on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what hurts Glover as well as a lot of the Brazilians. But if you go and talk to people in the ring and in the room that know what the sport is about, they'll tell you Glover is as good of a guy, as good of a person, as good of a man as you will find. And to me, that's at the end of the day, whenever you retire from the sport, who you are and who people talk about you to be within the sport, that's who you really are. And from that perspective, I think he's a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are in talks. This is breaking news. We are in talks. We'll see what shakes out. We're in talks to get a deal with a couple of UFC fighters sponsorships. By the way, I mean, you knew Steven Peterson. He was at our picnic.
Okay.
UFC fighter. Yeah. Right? He was at our picnic.
Okay. Yep.
We have not talked to him. He would be a guy on my list.
Yeah.
Good fighter. But Glover Teixeira would be one of them.
All right.
And the guy who beat the brakes off of Edson Barbosa, Doug Nasty.
Bryce Mitchell. Yeah.
Bryce, I'm a little more, 50-50 because I'm trying to figure out, does he really believe the earth is flat? I kind of don't like that. I like his giving half his paycheck to the Children's Hospital, and he's got a real heart. And
I think
the other part, I'm like, okay.
I don't know how much of that is shtick.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, just like Chael's persona was shtick.
Right.
I would like to think that Bryce's shtick is a persona that he is putting out there, but he is also from Arkansas. And so there is a greater than 0% chance that he is 100% legit.
And really what I'm looking for is somebody to come watch some fights with us at the Rook, which we're going to be unveiling. It's going to be so much because we're just going to do cool stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And so, that, and then maybe teaching some self-defense classes, which I think I've talked to you about,
right.
and maybe doing that for our staff and things like that. I think that's super cool. But Glover is an easy guy to get behind.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just a long ways away.
Connecticut's a long ways away, but one thing about putting your energy behind him is you can feel good about doing so. I am extraordinarily confident, and time will tell, but I am extraordinarily confident that John Jones will get arrested again before Glover Teixeira does.
Speaking of, John Jones going to fight for the, this is our quick hit section. John Jones fighting Cyril Gane for the
heavyweight champion. Yep.
Heavyweight championship as Francis Ngannou is gone. Who wins that and why?
John Jones wins it probably pretty handily in a pretty boring contest because that's how John Jones tends to do.
I think John Jones is going to wrestle him to death.
Yeah. He will. I'm not sure if we can say the term that Dana likes to use on this podcast, but he is going to do that. If Cyril Gane got out wrestled by a guy who came up and learned his MMA skills by shoveling sand, who's Francis Ngannou, who has literally zero wrestling in his entire life, versus a national champion wrestler who tosses Olympians on a regular. I love Cyril Gane, by the way. I think Cyril Gane's a good dude. I like him. I love watching him fight. I don't think that John Jones is a good person at all. I don't care for him. I don't care for his antics. I don't care for who he is, what he stands for. But if you are betting against John Jones, you are not betting with smart money.
I agree. All right, last topic, quick hit. Back to Conor McGregor. This drives me crazy because we talked about this probably 6, 8, 9. It could have been a year ago. And it was I always like to play matchmaker. Like, who would you want to put this guy up against if you were managing his career? And the number one thing, I don't know if I said it the last time we talked about, my number one thing is time is ticking. And he's now 34. There was an article the other day that said he was 36. I was like, that can't be right. I look it up as a main article, and I'm like, that's not right. He's 34. But 34, you're moving on. And you've got these knuckleheads that fight once a year, maybe.
Right.
And so he's been hurt, but he's apparently out of the testing. He doesn't get back into the testing when he reportedly is now well. And my point is he's wasting time. We're wasting time. We need an opponent. Who's your opponent for Conor? What makes sense? Because a lot of them don't make sense at this point.
Boy, that is a tough one. Yeah, I mean, I've got
somebody in mind.
The thing about Conor is he can pretty much carry his half the load and a good bit of yours and make a fight with just about anybody. So, are you asking from who would make a big fight, or who do we think Conor could beat?
You're managing his career, and you say we need a name, but we need a win. Dang it, we need a win. Who are you putting him up against? You want me to go first?
Please do. Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
I'm going to put him up against Tony Ferguson.
I love it.
I don't think it's a must win, but I think if Tony wins, then Tony's back on track. But I think that's a very winnable fight for McGregor. I think he is like Tyson when he came back to fight Peter McNeely. He needs somebody that he can beat. He does not need to walk into Michael Chandler after being out for 2-3 years.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Chandler, because the fight that makes sense from it would be a big fight angle is Chandler, but I don't think he can beat Chandler. I think Chandler picks him up and drops him on his head.
You thinking the same, Lee?
Yeah, I think there are about 2 or 3 humans on the planet that can beat Michael Chandler, and they've already done so.
He sure doesn't need Dustin Poirier.
No, he does not. He doesn't need. I was thinking Justin Gaethje actually made sense, because I think Gaethje is there to be hit, and if Conor gets in there with somebody that he's going to beat them by punching them in the head and knocking them out. And if he gets in there with Ferguson, Tony can be hit. But when's the last time Tony got knocked out? He got knocked out one time that I can remember, and that was that crazy foot from Chandler that would have knocked out an elephant. I mean, that's not glass jaw stuff. That's Tony is tough. Tony is rugged. He is hard to beat. The guys that have beaten him recently, the knockout happened, but when he got beat handily, it was by a grappler. So I like the chances if they stay on their feet. Tony can get hit. I don't know that Conor can hit him and knock him out with a fist, though. But that last shot he took, who knows how much he's got left. So that one makes a lot of sense.
Anybody better than
anybody? Well, anybody. Problem is, anybody better than Tony is also better than Conor. Yeah. I think Conor is still where he is, and he's still who he is based upon what he did, not what he's doing or not what he's going to do. And I may slightly disagree with you on Conor's wasting time. I think Conor may be extending his time. I think he is a subject of conversation right now because who knows? But if he comes back and gets starched again, he starts to become a lot less relevant. Because what happened last time he was out there?
I just think inactivity kills fighters. if you're not named Dominic Cruz, I just think you've got to fight. And man, he needs a winnable fight. You know, another one that I've thought about because he has a little bit of a name, Drew Dober. But
I don't know if Dober's a big enough draw to get in there with Conor, though. I think there's not enough upside for Conor, and it's too big of a downside.
He doesn't hit that hard. He will wrestle.
Yeah,
not a great wrestler. I think Dober's a guy he could beat, but I think he needs a win.
I agree with you there.
UFC is so different than boxing. There's no tune-up fights. Conor needs a tune-up, and if I were managing him, I would tell the UFC. I know it's not their business model, but hey, this is a tune-up fight. Call it what it is. The people are still going to pay for it, but good grief, he's been out. He's had a major injury. He needs a tune-up. He doesn't need a top 10 guy.
Right. I agree with you there. Of course, the UFC is not there to be there for any particular fighter. They're there to try to sell tickets. Yep. And as you can see with Glover, to take it back to him, that guy was a beast for them for forever. And they don't give him some cream puff on his go out fight. They gave him a guy that just beat the brakes off Thiago Santos, who almost beat John Jones the last time they fought. Oh, by the way, on 2 shot knees. Like, that dude is a bad, bad man. They don't tend to set you up with a cream puff for your last one to go out. They kill you on your way out and make sure that your ghost is dead, and they stab it in the heart too. So from Conor's angle, there's this one thing, sure. But then from Dana's angle, he's got to look at, how long do I want to extend keeping this guy around and keeping him at this level? Because I believe Dana could set him up with somebody that he could probably beat and extend his career, but he could also put him in there with Chandler or someone like that, some grappler of that level. Because Conor cannot handle a grappler. I mean, if somebody gets a hold of him that is that good, they're going to put him down. And Khabib showed everybody how to keep him down. I don't see him getting up from a real high level grappler. And he's always got a puncher's chance. You never know. But if you're going to be a puncher only, you better be right about it. Because if the other guy has a set of skills on the ground you can't deal with, you must win on your feet. Conor ain't choked anybody out ever that I know of. I've never seen him armbar anybody. I've never seen him take them out and just rain down punches and ground and pound somebody. He knocks you out on your feet or he doesn't. And that tends to be where it's at, and that doesn't get better with age.
What weight class do you bring him in at?
I don't see how he makes 155 again based upon the pictures that I've seen. I think, honestly, if I'm managing Conor, the better move for his career is probably to move him to 170 and get away from the Chandlers and fight Tony at 170. Tony will fight at 170. If you fight him there, although I think there's more guys at 170 that would be interesting fights for Conor. I think there's guys that at 170 that he could hit. They can hit him too. But I think at this stage of Conor's career, he needs somebody he can hit.
Yeah.
And somebody that's not going to take him down, put him on his head. Mm-hmm.
It's been a pleasure. If there are any 2 bigger MMA experts in the world, well, they're not sitting at this table. I can tell you that.
They don't have Juris Doctorates, and they're not sitting in this room.
That's right. Well, we have had a ball talking about one of our favorite things, which is MMA. Hope you've enjoyed it too, and we'll see you next time.